Hey guys, so this week we are continuing our new unit of Islam. So if you notice, these are some very long notes. That is fine. We are not finishing them all in one day. This will probably take us most of the week. Mrs. Romine and I prefer to front load, give you all the direct information at the beginning, and then we do activities as we go on to enforce that knowledge. So we're getting all the boring notes out of the way, and then more of the activity stuff will be done after this. So we're talking about Islam. We're talking about Islam's creation, their beliefs, and the spread of it, their Islamic culture and the achievements that they have done, the Ottoman Empire, which is a section of, which is one of the empires in the Islamic religious empire, and the caravan trade. All right. We are covering 5 standards with this. We are covering Standard 716, describe the origins and central features of Islam. So we'll talk about Muhammad, the Quran, and the Sunnah. The Quran is their holy book. The Sunnah is kind of like their second most holy book. And their basic beliefs of monotheism and their belief in the 5 pillars. For 717, we are going to describe the diffusion of Islam, its culture, and the Arabic language. So basically, how did it spread? 718, we are going to summarize the contributions of the region's scholars in the areas of art, geography, literature, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, and science. So all the stuff they did to help us make advancements. 719, explain the importance of Mehmed II, the Conqueror, the fall of Constantinople, and the establishment of the Ottoman Empire. Ignore a cat. And 720, analyze the development of trade routes throughout Asia, Africa, and Europe, and the expanding role of merchants. So basically, the trade routes that we've been talking about from last unit and this unit, how they expanded. All right, so again, we're not going to finish these all in one day, but we are going to do something very similar that we've been doing with the rest of our notes. We are writing down what is underlined and in a different color. This time, the color is red. All right, so Islam is the second largest religion in the world, with almost 2 billion people practicing it. People who practice Islam are called Muslims and worship Allah. Allah is the name that they call God. This is the exact same God that Christians worship. This is the exact same God that Jews worship. Again, just goes by a different name. So when you hear Allah, just translate it to God in your head. Allah equals God. They believe Allah is the only God, and belief in one God is called monotheism. The Prophet Muhammad, who is in the picture here, founded Islam in the 7th century in the country of Arabia. Now, Arabia is on the Arabian Peninsula. That map that we did on Friday had the Arabian Peninsula on it. According to tradition and early writings from the time period, the Archangel Gabriel revealed Allah's teachings to Muhammad. Remember, Allah equals God. The revelations began in 610 and ended when Muhammad died in 632. Muhammad recited these teachings to his followers, who wrote them down in a book called the Quran. The Quran is their version of, let's say, the Christian Bible. It is their holy book. It is the book that they go to for all of their religious knowledge. So, Quran, holy book, Allah, God. Prophet, Muhammad. Now, the Quran is the holiest book in Islam. This is one of the covers of the Quran. It discusses God, or Allah, the universe, the human soul, the law, and sin. Muslims believe the Quran is the word of God, or Allah. Many Muslims recite its prayers daily. The Quran is written in Arabic, and many Muslims recite it only in that language. All right? For a very long time, if you were going to convert to being a Muslim, you had to learn how to read, write, and speak Arabic, because that is the language of the religion. You could not get to do anything in the Muslim religion or in the Islamic religion without knowing Arabic. Muslims treat the Quran with a great deal of respect and devote their lives to it, very similar to the way many people devote their lives to Christianity and the teachings of the Bible. The Sunnah is the second holiest book of Islam. It includes the practices, customs, and traditions of Muhammad, and it's a major source of Islamic law. So the Quran is like their Bible. The Sunnah is like their code of law. So remember, the Quran is the holiest book. It's the word of God or Allah. The Sunnah is the second holiest book, traditions, and law. You can actually go through it this way. It's easier. Now, the 5 pillars of Islam are the foundation of Muslim life. In order to live a good and responsible life, Muslims must meet the following 5 obligations. So you have faith, belief that Muhammad is the last prophet of the one true God. Now, where Muslims differ from Christians, Muslims believe that Jesus was a prophet, that he was a prophet to spread the teachings of God. However, he was not the Son of God. He was just the prophet. And he wasn't the final prophet because that was Muhammad. So God still had more knowledge to passed it down through Muhammad. Muslims have to do prayer. They pray at least 5 times during a day. Usually at set times during the day. Now, usually, at least back in the time period, they would have something called minarets, which are like columns attached to buildings. And there would be a bell system or someone that would go up there and call out that it was time to pray. All right. Nowadays, most people tend to set alerts on their phone. All right. So giving to the poor and the needy. This is also known as charity. All right. Helping those that are less fortunate. All right. Like what's going on at McEwen and Waverly right now. A lot of people have lost a lot of things. They are needy, not because they want to be, but because this is the situation that has been given to them. So we are providing charity by bringing things like food, hygiene products, things like that to help them out. Fasting, not eating or drinking during the day during the month of Ramadan. Now, Ramadan is a holy month. That is where Muhammad literally did not eat or drink during the day at all so that he could get closer to God and learn more of him. All right, so I'm going to look up when Ramadan is. All right, so the next Ramadan is the month of April. All right, so in the month of April, you may have a lot of, if you know of any Muslims, all right, if you're friends with any Muslims, you may notice that they're not eating or drinking during the day in April. That is because that is when Ramadan is. They eat at night. All right, so they'll eat when the sun goes down, drink water, everything like that. They'll usually eat when the sun comes up. They're still living their day-to-day lives. They are still living a day-to-day life. They're just not eating until after the sun sets. Usually means they're going to sleep a little bit later, waking up a little bit earlier so that they can eat. Now, pilgrimage is also known as a Hajj, H-A-J-J, Hajj, H-A-J-J. If this person is able, they make a pilgrimage, a once-in-their-lifetime trip to Mecca. Mecca is actually the founding place of the religion of Islam. That is where Muhammad claimed that Mecca is where Muhammad claimed they had that this was their religious center. This was their city, sort of like if you are a Catholic, the most important city in being a Catholic is actually the Vatican City because that's where the Pope lives. Just things like that. All right, so you're going to use what you've learned from slides 3 to 5 to fill in the diagram below. So you're going to tell us who the key person is, what are their basic beliefs, what are their sacred texts. I'll give you guys about a minute to answer that. All right, so it's been a minute. Let's go on over it. So the key person is Muhammad. Their basic beliefs are monotheism and the 5 pillars, and their sacred text is the Quran and the Sunnah. Remember, Muhammad is the key person because he is the prophet. He is the one that has spread the religion. He started it, he's spreading it. Monotheism, belief in one God. Again, that is the same God. That is the same God that Jews and Christians worship. The 5 pillars, faith, prayer, giving, fasting, and pilgrimage or Hajj. And the sacred texts are the Quran, the Quran, which is their holy book. It's the Islamic holy book, similar to the Christianity's Bible. Sorry, my words are slurring today. And the Sunnah, which is their book of traditions and laws. All right. Now, we don't have anything to fill in for these next few slides because this is a very big chart. So it's just kind of the growth and spread of Islam. So in 570 CE, oh my goodness, my words, I'm so sorry. Muhammad was born in Mecca. He was born in 570. His father was a member of the Quraysh, which was a powerful tribe of merchants. All right, so he was a merchant. He was a traveling trader. His birthplace, the city of Mecca, was a trading hub. It was also home to two highly revered polytheistic cults, just polytheistic religions, whose pagan gods were thought to protect Mecca's trade. Excuse me. Thought to protect Mecca's trade. Now, Muhammad received his first revelation in the year 610. According to Muslim tradition and teachings, Muhammad started having visions around the age of 40. These visions led him to believe that there is only one God and that he should go forth and speak in the name of the Lord. Muhammad began to preach the basic message of Islam, that there is no God but Allah, remember that's their word for God, and that life should be lived in submission to Allah's will. Same way that a lot of Christians live in deference to God's teachings. Many people liked Muhammad's message and followed him, but others did not and began to persecute Muhammad and his followers. Remember, to persecute means to attack, hurt someone, or chase someone because they have a different belief than you. In 622, Muhammad and his followers migrated to the city of Medina, or Medina, however you want to pronounce it. So the Quraysh, which again Muhammad's father was a part of when he was alive, they forced Muhammad and his followers to leave Mecca as they were threatened by Muhammad's message. The leaders of the Yathrib, which was a town that was later renamed Medina, were tired of fighting a civil war, and they invited Muhammad, who was known for his sage advice, to migrate there. They wanted his help in ending this war. Once there, Muhammad made the pagans, people that worship different gods, Muslims and Jews of Medina sign an agreement to protect each other from harm. Even though this agreement turned out to be an uneasy alliance, as relations with the three Jewish clans in the area, the Banu Nadir, the Banu Qayagna, and the Banu Qurayza, were rocky from the start, Muhammad begins to amass followers. So yes, he gets them to sign an alliance, and it's not always the best. They don't always work well together. He's getting more and more followers. He's getting some people devoting themselves to Islam. He's getting some people following his word and following his teachings. So in 624 to 627, his followers try to retake Mecca. The Meccans and Muslims continue to be at odds. Muslims begin to attack Meccan caravans, and in 624, the Meccans tried to drive Muhammad out of Medina. The Muslims won the first battle and forced members of Banu Nadir and Banu Qaynaga clans to exile because they had sided with the Meccans. All right, so because these two clans decided that they didn't want to follow Muhammad's teachings and they wanted to side with the people from the city of Mecca, they got kicked out. That's what happens. You had two more battles happen afterwards. The Muslims lost the battle in 625, but outlasted the Meccans in the Battle of the Trench in 627. All right, this is supposed to say but. My apologies. In 630, the Muslims succeeded in retaking Mecca. Muhammad died in the year 632, but that didn't stop the spread of Islam. By the year 750, Islam had spread throughout the Middle East and into Africa, Spain, and nearly all of the way into India. The Islamic Empire was vast. All right, so even after Muhammad dies, The religion is just spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading. But it spread for 3 reasons. We'll actually read 5 in an activity that we do next week, but these are the big 3. The first one is conquest. You had Muslims waging war to expand their territory, fueled by the belief that it was their sacred duty to spread their faith to non-believers. That was the biggest one. The biggest reason that Islam spread so quickly was through conquest. The biggest reason it spread so quickly was through conquest. The biggest reason it spread so quickly was through conquest. I have said that 3 times. That's pretty important. You might want to make a note of that. You might want to go through and see if you can highlight something. If possible, I don't remember if you can or can't on your student slides. It's pretty important. It might show up on your test. Your test is September 9th. Unless something else happens. But it's probably going to be September 9th. So other than conquest, which was the main reason why Islam spread so quickly, you also had conversion. For the most part, new Islamic governments allowed conquered peoples to exist as they had before, but they added Muslim governments. Many people converted to Islam. Some of the reasons that they would convert included the appeal of new religious beliefs, a desire to be part of the Islamic society, and even the wish to avoid taxes and restrictions placed on non-Muslims. Right? If you're not following their religion, you're going to have more rules, more taxes to pay, more rules to follow. And a lot of people, they would convert just to get out of that. You also had increased tolerance. Muslims treated conquered Jews and Christians with tolerance because they were considered people of the book, those to whom scripture had been revealed. All 3 of these groups, Muslims, Jews, Christians, they all come from the teachings of Abraham. They all come from the teachings of Abraham. That is why they are considered people of the book. They have received the same scripture, but they have received it differently. They have interpreted it or recited it, taught it to people differently. But this tolerance allowed for Jews and Christians to participate economically and socially in the Muslim society. They're still subject to special rules, but they're able to actually participate in society. And this helped the Islamic Empire to flourish. All right. So with that tolerance, the empire is able to grow because Christians and Jews are actually helping them. They're helping them grow the government. They're helping them grow the economy, helping them grow society, which leads them to be able to have more conquests happen and get more people to convert. I am not saying that conquest is the only way to spread religion. That is one of the fastest ways, but it's not one of the best ways. Islam still would have spread. It still would have spread pretty far, but not nearly as far had they not done conquest. Oh, that picture's kind of blurry. My apologies. Now, after Muhammad died, there was the question of who would be the next leader of the religion. Some people felt that the next leader needed to be a relative of Muhammad, while others believed that the next leader should just be someone devoted to the religion and a good leader in general. Due to this disagreement, Muslims split into 2 factions or groups. So you have the Sunni, who believed that their leader does not have to be related to Muhammad, and Sunnis are the majority of Muslims in the world today. And then you have the Shia, who believe that their leader had to be related to Muhammad. They're the minority. They both still believe in Allah. They both still practice with the Quran. They both still practice the 5 pillars. They just started out with a disagreement of who was going to be the leader. Sunni could have been anyone as long as he was a good leader and Muslim. Shia, you had to be related to Muhammad. If you weren't related to Muhammad, you could not be the leader. The Sunnis are the majority. The Shia are the minority. Shia tend to be a lot more orthodox or stick strictly to tradition. Right? Shias tend to be much more orthodox or strict. They also tend to take things more literally in their religion. All right, now we have a map skill builder. This map looks very nice on here. So we are going to drag the box to where Muhammad was born. We are going to drag the circle around the city from where the spread of Islam began. And why do you think Islam did not advance so much into the purple area? Now, because I am in presentation mode, you can't see my box and my circle, but they are over here off to the side. Yours will be right over there as well. All right, so go on ahead, take a minute, answer your questions. Okay, so I dragged the box where Muhammad was born. He was born at the city of Mecca. You should have that circled in you should have that box around Mecca. If you don't have a box around Mecca, put it there. Drag the circle from where the city of spread of Islam began. Oh, look, we can see all the arrows from the military campaigns. That means it's where it's starting to spread. So it started to spread from Medina. Yes, it spread from Mecca too. However, the big spreads really start from the city of Medina because that's where they start fighting. Now, Muhammad and his followers do get Mecca back, and they do start spreading it from Mecca as well, but it says began, and it began from Medina. Now, if we look at the non-Islamic kingdoms, which is the purple, the Byzantine Empire over here, all right, we got to think religion here. Why did Islam not advance into the Byzantine Empire? Yeah, the Byzantine Empire developed a good military. They had the fire chain. They had the Greek fire. They had the chains with spikes. But really, if I could, there we go. The Byzantine Empire was mostly Christian. And Christians are not going to tolerate another religion coming in and dominating them. All right? Especially at this time period, the Byzantine Empire is very, very unified in their religion. The Islamic Empire is very unified in their religion. And when this happens, they're not really going to mess with each other until one side feels incredibly confident that they're going to be able to take over. Now, we know that earlier, the Byzantine Empire had actually regained some of this land. The Byzantine Empire lost it pretty quickly after Justinian died. The emperors just couldn't control it. So the land had gone back to being not part of the Byzantine Empire, which made it very easy for the Muslim religion or the Islamic Empire to come in and take it over. I keep saying Islamic Empire. That doesn't mean that Islam is a government. It's not. Islam is a religion. But the leaders of the religion, the caliphs, the first four caliphs, the Umayyad caliphs, they're spreading the religion, but they're treating it more and more like an empire. So I'm saying Islamic Empire, even though the only thing Islamic about it is their religion and their laws. Islam is a religion, not an empire. We are referring to it as the Islamic Empire because that's the religion they're spreading, is Islam. I know that can be very confusing. Just know that when I'm talking about the Umayyads or the Ottomans, if I say anything Islamic Empire, just know that they're using their religion, Islam, as a reason to expand their empire. So they are the Islamic Empire because they are using Islam to expand their empire. All right, so now we have another true or false, or we have another set of questions. This one is true or false. We're going to type T in the box for true or F for false. And we are going to correct any false statements to make them true using the box underneath the sentence. So our four sentences are Islam is a polytheistic religion. Number 2 is the Quran is written in English. Number 3, Muslims used a combination of force and persuasion to spread Islam. So persuasion is convincing people, talking to them, convincing them to change their ideas or convincing them to do something. Number 4, the Islamic Empire stretched from Spain to nearly India by 750. So I'm going to go on ahead and let you answer that. Give you a minute or two. All right. So our first one, Islam is a polytheistic religion. Well, that's false. Okay, how can we correct that to make that true? Well, Islam is a monotheistic religion. They believe in one God. What do they call that God? You're right. They call that God Allah. Right? Is Allah the same God that Christians and Jews worship? Yes. Allah is the same God that Christians and Jews worship. I want you guys to remember that. I don't know why people seem to think they're different gods. There are many different names for God. It's still God. Number 2, the Quran is written in English. True or false? You got that right. That's false. What language is it written in? It's written in Arabic. Right? There are some translations of it in English. Most Muslims wouldn't be happy about that, though. They feel the need to keep it in Arabic because that is the home language. Right? Muslims used a combination of force and persuasion to spread Islam. True or false? It's true. Right? Force is conquest. They're taking the land over. Persuasion, that's the conversion. They're convincing them to convert to their religion, either by getting them out of special rules and taxes that they would have if they were a different religion, or just by letting them actually participate in the government or the economy or in certain parts of culture. And then number 4, the Islamic Empire stretched from Spain to nearly India by 750. Ding, 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 it's true again, it's true again. That's a huge empire. That's a lot of land. Right, now we're getting into talking about standards 717 and 718. You've already been in standard 17, which is the spread of Islam and Arabic. We're also getting ready to get into 718, which is their achievements or their contributions. One of these achievements or contributions actually is Arabic. Now, the Arabic language dates back to the 4th century, but it wasn't widely written until the 8th century. It's considered a poetic language, and in its early years, Arabic helped different Arab tribes form a cultural bond with one another. Today, Arabs and Muslims have a deep love for the Arabic language and the way it has helped them connect to the culture of the region. Now, this is another part where I pause and explain something to you. If you are a Muslim, you are a part of the Islamic religion. If you are an Arab, you are from Arabia or the Arabian Peninsula. You can be a Muslim and not be an Arab. You can be an Arab and not be a Muslim. They are not the same thing. Ow, I hit my hand. They are not the same thing. Arabs are from the Arabian Peninsula. They are from a place. Muslims are part of the Islamic religion. They are part of a religion. They are not the same thing. Now, Arabic, like many languages, actually began to spread from Arabia as Islam spread. All right? Because Islam was taught in Because Islam was taught in Arabic, the Quran was written in Arabic, the leaders spoke Arabic. Of course, as you're spreading the religion, you're going to spread the language of Arabic. In the Eastern Mediterranean and parts of Mesopotamia, most people spoke Aramaic, but in time they started to speak Arabic. In other places such as Persia, Arabic did not replace the current languages, but it was spoken alongside. So in some areas it becomes the main language, in others it just becomes one of the common languages. All right, and then over here on the side, just a picture of what it would look like if you wrote some of the colors in Arabic and if you had to pronounce them in Arabic. No, I'm not pronouncing those for you. I'm not good at pronouncing Arabic. Sorry, it's not one of my skills. Now we're getting into their art. So the Islamic art includes both religious and non-religious works. Islamic religious art glorifies God's or Allah's word and includes manuscripts of the Quran written in beautiful calligraphy. Now, something important about Islamic art is that they do not ever picture humans or animals. All right, this is especially the case of religious art. One of their teachings is that you are not to actually put a face to God, as God is so superior, that would be like worshiping an idol or someone that, takes your focus away from someone that you really, really, really need, someone or something you really need to focus on. They felt that if you were seeing pictures of God, that would distract you from the word of God. So a lot of the religious art is actually segments of the Quran written in beautiful script to make it much more appealing to the eye. Like this one right here. Now I don't know what it says, but it's very gorgeous and it's Arabic calligraphy. Right? And the non-religious works often have geometric shapes on paintings, ceramics, ivories, silks, carpets, and other items. So if you're seeing a lot of geometric patterns, it's probably inspired by Islamic artists, right? Now, I won't lie, when I see this kind of design, I think of tiles, tiles that you find on floors or walls as decoration. It's still gorgeous. This is beautiful. I would not be able to do that. The Quran doesn't really specifically outlaw humans in art, but it's really understood that you shouldn't do that. Again, you need to focus on things like geometric patterns and calligraphy. They would still do nature scenes and things like that, but that wasn't their main focus. Things like geometric shapes and calligraphy were much more their main focus. Now, for geography, the Islamic leaders took an interest in the larger world as they expanded their empire. Of course that is. You're going to be finding more land and you're going to be interested in seeing, well, how can I trade with them? Or how could I take them over? They translated Greek and Roman books about geography into Arabic. They also translated Greek and Roman texts into Arabic. One of the main reasons why we have so much of the Greek and Roman history that we have today is because the Muslims translated it into Arabic. And then later on, people in Europe found them again and translated it again into more common language, like Italian and French and early English. So if the Muslims had not gotten a lot of these Greek and Roman books from areas that they had taken over and actually translated them for us, we might not have nearly as much of this history that we do today. Muslim geographers made important contributions. Ash-Sharif al-Idrisi, who lived during the 12th century, wrote one of the best books about geography during that time. It was called The Pleasure Excursion of One Who is Eager to Traverse the Regions of the World. It had many impressive maps. Now, I'm not saying that they were entirely accurate. You need to remember that during this time period, North and South America were not known. They did not know about North and South America. So any maps that you see from this time period are definitely not going to be 100% accurate. But we see some of them later that become much more accurate in terms of what they had already seen. So they're mapping the Mediterranean Sea more accurately, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, Europe, Asia. They're mapping that pretty accurately, but we know it's not a 100% accurate map because it did not include North and South America. But with all of this traveling, they are focusing much more on map making, which is also known as cartography. This allows them to make better maps, and it makes it easier to travel and trade. Now, some of the greatest works of literature come from Islamic culture. The best known example is Arabian Nights, which is a collection of Persian, Indian, and Arabian folktales. This book is also called The 1001 Nights, which tells the stories of characters such as Aladdin and Ali Baba. All right? So think back to the Aladdin animated movie with Robin Williams. Or, you guys probably haven't seen that one, or the live action one with Will Smith as Genie. And I'm going to show my nerdiness here. And the Pink Power Ranger as Princess Jasmine. Okay, she was the Pink Power Ranger in the Power Ranger movie that came out in like 2017? 2016? I don't know, it was a while ago. Actually, it might have been 2018. Either way, We wouldn't have these movies, we wouldn't have these stories if it was not for this novel, for this collection of folktales that was written in Arabic. Included in literature is also the translation of Greek, Roman, and Persian writings into Arabic. This was done so that the knowledge of these peoples would be kept and be able to understood for future generations. And again, later on, these books that are written in Arabic actually get translated into other languages, like English, which allows us to understand what they're talking about now. This lets us have so much of that culture and that history that we could have lost otherwise. This is where people usually get a little math. Muslims during medieval times made many significant contributions to the study of mathematics. In the 9th century, Al-Khwarizmi, who was a Muslim mathematician and astronomer, wrote a book called On the Calculation with Hindu Numerals. This was responsible for popularizing the use of numerals 0 through 9. Our modern day numerals are Arabic numerals. 0 through 9. All of our numbers came to us because of Al-Khwarizmi, who brought us our numbers. Imagine trying to do the math that you do in Miss Hole's, or in Miss Britt's class, or Mr. Layton's class, with Roman numerals. Imagine trying to do division with Roman numerals. I don't want to do that. It's hard enough doing it with regular numbers. I'm actually pretty good at math, but I know some of you aren't. Eventually, Hindu Arabic numerals replaced Roman numerals. Okay, that's how we got this. Determined to find a general way to analyze problems, Al-Khwarizmi also used words and diagrams to explain and solve algebra problems, and came up with the idea of rewriting expressions in simplest form. So, Al-Khwarizmi is sometimes called the father of algebra. The word algebra comes from Al-Khwarizmi's book, The Compendious Book on Calculation by Completion and Balancing. So when you get to high school, and high school / 8th grade, and you start studying algebra, you can thank Al-Khwarizmi. I don't actually know if you'll be thanking him, but at least you know where it came from. Medicine! So many of our advancements in medicine come from the Muslims. Oh my goodness. Muslim doctors help advance the practice of medicine during medieval times. In the 13th century, Egyptian doctor Ibn al-Nafis, discovered that blood flows from the heart to the lungs in order to get oxygen. This advanced doctor's understanding of blood circulation, how blood circulates throughout the body, and its importance. Ibn Sina wrote a book called The Canon of Medicine in the 11th century that was used to teach medicine in both the Islamic world and Europe. Guys, he wrote one of the first medical textbooks. People were now not just learning medicine through trial and error, but also from being taught by other people and books. That hadn't happened before. This is an incredibly big deal. The book included information about the symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment of many diseases that affect the human body and was translated into 87 languages. That is an incredibly big deal. Finally, Muslims also expanded medical schools and established hospitals throughout the empire, even in rural areas. Hospitals had separate wings for men and women, wards for mentally ill patients, and pharmacies where people could get medicine. This is such a big deal. Medical schools, now you could actually have a trained doctor that has read the canon of medicine, has gone through training, and proven that he is capable of being a doctor, instead of just going to the town doctor who got the job somehow, and you don't know if he's really a good doctor or not, but he's the only one in town, so you're going to go to him. Now you can actually see, yes, this is a good doctor. He graduated from medical school. Kind of a big deal. Now, philosophy. Philosophy is really the study of the earth, questioning things. Why are we here? What is our purpose? Things like that. Al-Kindi was the first Arab philosopher. In his most famous work, On First Philosophy, he encourages people to follow Greek philosophy. He also discusses the everlasting nature of the world, the existence of one God, and how only God can bring unity to everything. Arabs also consider Al-Farabi, another philosopher, to be nearly as important as the Greek philosopher Aristotle. All right, so they've been asking those questions even since back then. Science. Again, a lot of contributions. Muslim scientists have made many valuable contributions to scientific discovery. Ibn al-Haytham, who was born in Iraq, discovered that light travels in a straight line. His method of experimentation led to the development of the scientific method. Right? That is the method in that we do scientific discovery, the way we follow experiments, things like that. We'll talk more about that later on in the school year. Al-Jahiz was an early believer in the evolution and wrote about food chains in the Book of Animals. Omar Khayyam, who was an astronomer, mathematician, and a poet, developed a very precise solar calendar, the Jalali, which is thought to be better than the Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar we use in the United States. Right? So their calendar, pretty different from ours. However, still pretty similar. All right. Now I just need to fix one little thing. I'm just gonna do that. Okay. Now we're going to identify contributions made by scholars in the Middle East, Southwest Asia to North Africa in each field. And we're going to give at least 2 examples for each type of contribution. Now, on your screen, you have the chart there, and you need to give at least 2 examples for each type of contribution. When you're doing those contributions, what should you do if you get stuck? Scroll back up and look at the others. Okay? It's really important that you can scroll back and look at your notes. Okay? Give you guys a couple minutes to work on that. Okay, so this is what I have. Now, I'm going to show you why I didn't already have the chart up. I can't put transitions in charts. I don't know why. It's pretty sad. Now, for geography, you had Islamic scholars translating Greek and Roman books about geography into Arabic. You have As-Sharif al-Idrisi writing an important book with many impressive maps. Again, cartography, really important. Cartography is the skill of map making or the study of map making. It's very, very important. Very, very important. Al-Khwarizmi for mathematics wrote a book that popularized the use of Hindu Arabic numerals, aka 0 through 9. He also used words and diagrams to solve algebra problems. So you can blame him when you get to algebra. Don't actually blame him. It made it a lot easier. It just doesn't seem like it. And in science, you have Ibn al-Haytham discovered that light travels in a straight line. Al-Jahiz wrote about food chains and was an early believer in evolution. Omar Khayyam developed a solar calendar. There are so many more things that we're not talking about. But guys, Muslim contributions have made such a big impact on us today. Better maps, better knowledge, better number system makes it a lot easier for us to do math. Algebra could have been a lot harder had he not figured this out. I promise you, could have been harder. All right, the solar calendar that we eventually base ours off of with some tweaking, like it's a really big deal. All right, so we're switching over to another section. This is where we focus on units 19 or standards 19 and 20. So remember, standard 19 is talking about the Ottoman Empire, Mehmed the Conqueror or Mehmed II, and how he took over Constantinople. And also caravan trading, how merchants actually were trading throughout Europe and Asia and Africa. And the Middle East. The Middle East is the area between Europe and Asia. It's that middle part of the continents where they kind of blend together. All right, so one of the most successful empires in world history was the Ottoman Empire. It lasted for more than 600 years and didn't come an end until the 20th century, specifically the year 1922. Guys, next year, they have been ended for 100 years. That's not a long time ago. That's really not a long time ago. At its height, the Ottoman Empire made many important contributions in the arts, sciences, culture, and religion. All right, so this picture is of the Ottoman Empire in 1683, which was at its greatest extent. And you can see just how it spread out. Okay, you'll see this map again later on. Now, in the early 1300s, the Byzantine Empire was in decline. The Byzantines, who ruled their vast empire from Constantinople, left their provinces in Anatolia unguarded. This led the way for Osman I to lead a group of Turkish warriors in their battles against the Byzantines. Beginning in 1301, Osman I and his successors began seizing and taking control of land on the peninsula of Anatolia, which is bordered to the north by the Black Sea and to the south by the Mediterranean Sea. Now, eventually, the Ottomans captured land in southeastern Europe. Now, I'm just going to go right back up here, and I'm going to show you, this is the land that they're trying to take. It's this land. It's this land. It's this land. This is the land they're wanting. Okay, Constantinople's right here. They're taking this land over. It's not going to be that hard for them to sneak over and just go, hi, you're mine now, Constantinople. Now here's the deal. They had a lot of reasons for the growth of their empire. They concentrated power in one leader in one family, so you constantly knew who was in charge, and there wasn't going to be arguments about succession. They built a strong military with access to cannons. They were united by Islam, which was incorporated into the state structure. So again, there's no separation of church and state. They're literally building their empire and their rules around their religion. They created alliances across political and racial groups. So they're working together with all sorts of people. And they centralized their government, meaning that they weren't spreading it all out. They had it centralized, it was working together, and it was working strong. That led them to being able to go out and spread their religion and their empire a lot easier because they weren't having to deal with a lot of issues that other countries were. All right, so on the next slide, you have rapid recall, which is asking you to bold the correct answers. So I'm just going ahead and let you answer that for a second. Okay, so double check your answers here. You're going to bold the correct words or dates to correctly describe the Ottoman Empire. Well, I already have mine bolded. Oops, it's all right. The Ottoman Empire lasted for more than 600 years and did not end until the 20th century, specifically 1922. The Ottoman Empire was founded around 1300 after Turkish warriors won battles against the Byzantine Empire. The Ottomans captured land on the Anatolia Peninsula before taking territory in southeastern Europe. And the Ottomans built a very powerful military force that allowed their empire to grow. All right, so that was basically just summarizing the last slide. Pretty easy. Pretty easy. Now, in 1444, the leader Murad II abdicated or gave up the throne and made his 12-year-old son Mehmed II sultan or leader. All right, so they weren't calling the leaders of their empire caliphs anymore. They had switched to the term sultan. But that just means the same thing. It just means that they're the leader of the empire. Rulers far and wide, including the king of Hungary, the pope, and the leaders of the Byzantine Empire, joined together to launch a crusade or a humongous religious attack against the young sultan. Their invasion and internal turmoil led Murad II to come back to lead the army in 1446. And we'll talk way more about crusades later on. They're usually a holy war, meaning that they're going in regards to deal with religion in some form, usually because one area has taken control of an important land to the other religion. We'll focus on that later on, closer to Christmas. Mehmed II regained control of the throne in 1451. So 7 years later, he was 19 when his father died. He remained in power over the next 30 years. During his reign, Mehmed II, also known as Mehmed the Conqueror, expanded the Ottoman territory to include all of Anatolia and the Balkan Peninsula. This peninsula is bordered by the Black, Aegean, Mediterranean, and Adriatic seas. These territories were the center of the Ottoman Empire for 4 centuries. So he's called Mehmed the Conqueror because he's conquering a lot of places, right? He's conquered all of Anatolia. He's conquered all of the Balkan Peninsula. What is a big city that you think he might actually take over or conquer? Hint. We had some test questions on it last unit. And it was a pretty important city for the Byzantine Empire. It was Constantinople. Mehmed II wants Constantinople. His heart is set on capturing Constantinople. Now, the once powerful and affluent, meaning that they're really really rich, powerful, they've got a lot of money. The city had already lost some of its glory, and many of the inhabitants have fled. So the city, which was up at the top of the hill, it was so important, it's kind of fallen down. It's kind of falling down the hill, right? It's not as powerful or important anymore. But now, those who remained in Constantinople feared Mehmed, especially since he had professed his desire to take over the city. He was telling people, I want Constantinople. I'm going to take Constantinople, and you're not going to stop me. So in 1453, the forces of Mehmed II invaded and captured Constantinople. This fall of Constantinople led to a huge number of deaths. Many of the city's inhabitants committed suicide rather than face capture or enslavement. Of those who remained, more than 4,000 were killed and over 50,000 enslaved. Mehmed II doesn't sound like a super nice guy, does he? There's a reason his name is Conqueror, not something like Magnificent. Treasures were lost, books were burned, the Hagia Sophia was turned into a mosque, and anything with a Christian message, including mosaics and frescoes, a fresco is a type of painting, were cut into pieces. He really didn't tolerate that. So the fall of Constantinople was a major blow to the Christian world. It was the end of the Byzantine, or Old Roman Empire, and the last link between the medieval and ancient worlds. All right, so with the fall of the Byzantine Empire, the fall of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire, we fully have left the ancient world, which you guys were talking about all of last year. That's what you've studied last year, was the ancient world. And now we have fully thrown ourselves into the medieval world, which is what we're talking about this year. All right, so you went from ancient to medieval. And this is the turning point for many historians. When Mehmed II takes the city, kills these people, enslaves these people, and destroys a lot of this Christian artwork, this is kind of the turning point of, well, here we go. We're in a brand new era. We're in a brand new time period. Let's see what happens. But after the fall of Constantinople, it was reborn as the city of Istanbul. And in the 16th century, it became the largest city in Europe. This city has gone through two name changes that we've already talked about. It went from Byzantium to Constantinople because the Emperor Constantine moved the capital from Rome to Byzantium and changed the name to name it after himself. And now Constantinople is being renamed again by Mehmed, and he's calling it Istanbul. Don't ask me why he named it Istanbul, because I don't know. Mehmed's conquest of Constantinople made him the most famous and important ruler in the Muslim world. While he ruled, Mehmed II has a humongous impact. Now, he rebuilt Constantinople and constructed many new buildings, including palaces and the Great Mosque of the Conqueror, with its hospitals, colleges, and public baths. So it's not like he destroyed it and just left it decimated. He did make the city better. He established 8 colleges in Constantinople, where the best science schools in the empire were. He encouraged the Ottomans to develop a better understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and religion, and he compiled criminal laws into one code and made it official. So he's doing some important things. He just is very cruel when it comes to taking places over. But Mehmed, he did some good things, but man, he was harsh, and he was known to severely punish anybody who disobeyed his orders and the law. He considered the non-Muslim world to be war territory and pursued a holy war, or a crusade, inspired by the duty to spread Islam and the benefits of Ottoman rule. He waged war against the islands in the Aegean Sea and against the Balkan Peninsula at the expense of both Serbia and Hungary. He was met with success in the Aegean, but was unable to capture Hungary. And here's an image of Mehmed II, or a painting of Mehmed II. All right, so we've got some quick review here. We're going to complete the sentences to explain the impact of Mehmed II as an Ottoman leader. Mehmed became Sultan when blank gave up the throne. So who gave up the throne? Mehmed II expanded the Ottoman Empire to include all of blank and the Balkan Peninsula. Mehmed II conquered blank and established the Ottoman Empire in place of the old Byzantine or Roman Empire. Mehmed II established 8 blank, and he compiled all blank into one code. All right, so let's go over those. Mehmed II became Sultan when Murad II, his father, gave up the throne. Mehmed II expanded the Ottoman Empire to include all of Anatolia and the Balkan Peninsula. Mehmed II conquered Constantinople and established the Ottoman Empire in place of the old Byzantine or Roman Empire. He established 8 colleges and compiled all criminal law into one code. So he's doing some good things, but man, he's vicious. Just goes to show you, nobody's perfect. He's doing some great things as leader, but he is not a nice guy, and he's not someone you want to cross or make mad. All right, so we're going to complete the timeline with important events from Mehmed II's life. So what happened to him in 1444? What happened to him in 1451? And what happened in 1453? We know he dies in 1481, but what happened in these 3 boxes? Give you guys a few minutes to fill that out. In 1444, Murad II, Mehmed's father, abdicates or gives up his throne to his son Mehmed II. In 1451, Mehmed II regains his throne after his father, who took the throne back in time of war, died. And in 1453, Mehmed II captures Constantinople. And as we know, he dies in 1481. Now, Mehmed's rule helped usher in a golden age that lasted from 1481 until 1566, during the reigns of Bayezid II, Selim I, and Suleiman I the Magnificent. Now, a golden age means that it is its height. It is perfect. Okay, let me rephrase. It's not perfect, but it is doing its absolute very best. It is at its height. It is the best it's going to be. It's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. My cat. Sorry, I'm recording this at home. The rule of Suleiman featured great artistic achievements in cities throughout the empire. The Ottomans excelled at painting, calligraphy, poetry, textiles, carpet weaving, ceramics, and music. So textiles is like fabric that you make clothes out of. Carpet weaving, making carpets. Ceramics is like types of plates or pottery, like toilets can be made out of ceramic. They also built magnificent buildings that featured stunning architecture. A lot of that architecture was Roman in influence. They made great advancements in philosophy, physics, geography, and chemistry. The Ottomans were great inventors. They invented tools such as forceps, catheters, and scalpels, all of which we still use today during operations and in hospital stays. Right? Pretty big deal. All right, so we're going to write a sentence describing the land that the Ottoman Empire encompassed at its greatest extent based on your analysis of this map. So, how would you describe all of the land that they have? I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write that down. Now look, do not directly copy the sentence because that's cheating, because it's not even a real sentence. That's the teacher book answer. You need to have mentioned that the Ottoman Empire included lands in Africa, Europe, and Asia. All right, so now we're going to complete the graphic organizer to show the sequence of events during the Ottoman Empire. Now, in the early 14th century, we know that Osman I and his successors took control of some of the land on the peninsula of Anatolia. Then we have a space, and then we know that Mehmed II helped usher in a golden age for the Ottoman Empire. So what's happening in between this? In between Osman I and Mehmed II's golden age, and what's happening after the golden age? I'll give you a couple minutes to answer that. And then on this slide, you're going to explain the significance of Mehmed II the Conqueror on the establishment of the Ottoman Empire. Then we're going to describe various achievements that were developed in the early Ottoman Empire. So you're going to write a paragraph, a 5-sentence paragraph explaining the significance of Mehmed II the Conqueror and what achievements were developed in the early Ottoman Empire. So, why was he important on the creation of the Ottoman Empire, and what did they invent? Go on ahead and type your paragraph. We're not going to go over it, but I am going to read it. All right, we're in our last section. We're on standard 720, the role of merchants and the spread of trade routes. Now, as the Islamic Empire expanded, trade became even more significant to the people who lived there. When Muslims went to Mecca for their once-in-a-lifetime pilgrimage, or Hajj, or trip, they would finance their travels by selling goods along the way. The items they sold included silk, salt, gold, spices, grains, incense, textiles, and fabrics. So they were selling really anything they could that they thought others might not have. The textile and fabric trades were particularly significant. The first Muslim caliph or leader was a textile merchant. All right, Muhammad was also a merchant by trade. Entire families would participate in the spinning and weaving of fabrics. There were factories in a variety of Spanish cities, Baghdad, Persia, the Egyptian city of Tinis, and many others. You had luxury goods such as silk, spices, fur, and incense that were highly desired by people in the upper class. And everyday items that everybody needed included salt and grains. Paper was also widely traded after paper-making technology was invented in the 8th century. And another thing that was traded throughout Asia, Africa, and Europe was medicine, especially from the Muslims who were actually developing new types of medicine that worked really well, especially on common ailments that they had discovered that they were working on fixing, or at least treating. That medicine was highly sought after. It would get them a lot of money in order to go to Mecca. All right, so we have a critical thinking question here. What non-economic effects would trade between different parts of the Islamic Empire, East Asia, and Africa likely result in? So cite evidence and examples to support your response. So you need to write at least 3 sentences explaining what trade is going to impact other than just money. Right? So 3 sentences, what is trade going to impact other than money, and give some examples of that. All right? It doesn't have to be an example from Islam. It could be an example from today. It could be an example from Rome. It could be an example of something you studied last year. All right? So go on ahead and type your 3 sentences. Again, we're not sharing them out, but I am going to read them once you turn in your notes. Now, like today, some merchants sold a small number of goods, while other merchants sold many goods. You had the Karamis, who were a group of about 50 merchant families in Egypt, Yemen, India, and Ceylon, which was a small island off of the coast of India. All right, this is where we get very fancy Ceylon cinnamon. Not that you care about that, but so. They dominated commercial activity and became very wealthy, and they are considered the precursors to modern corporations. So, because of them, we got things like Walmart and Amazon. Thanks, Karamis. Now, trade was made possible by the trade routes that connected different parts of Southwest Asia, aka the Middle East, as well as the routes that reached Africa, Europe, and India. You're not really seeing anything in India here, but there were trade routes here, and also Asia. The Indian Ocean trade route was more important than land trade routes since it was easier to ship goods over water than over land. So this one was pretty important. Inland trade was sometimes conducted with river barges. Other ships traveled along the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and Indian Ocean along the African coast. Trade was also conducted across the Mediterranean Sea between Europe and North Africa. All right, so we can see a lot of trade routes here. Now, caravans carried large groups of people and camels across much of the Islamic world on land. Regular routes were followed, but roads between cities that could support wheeled vehicles didn't exist. Instead, you had camels being used to carry the goods. A caravan could sometimes be composed of up to 5,000 camels. That's a lot. The best known route was the Silk Road. The Silk Road consisted of a major network of trade routes. Now, the best known trade route began in the Chinese city of Xi'an. Shen. I don't remember how to pronounce that. I think it's Shan. I'm studying Japanese, not Chinese, guys. Okay? Sorry, I'm learning. Passed through Persia and ended in Baghdad. Another route extended from Russia to the Islamic world, and caravan routes beginning in Baghdad traversed the Arabian desert and reached the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. There were also caravan routes in North Africa. Camels were extremely valuable to early merchants throughout Eurasia, which is Europe and Asia, and Africa. So basically, you wanted a camel. It was very, very helpful. All right, so we're doing a quick review here. Answer the questions in complete sentences. Which luxury goods were traded in the Islamic Empire? Where were fabric factories located? Why was the Indian Ocean trade route more important than land trade routes? And what were caravans? All right, give you a minute to answer those questions. All right, so the luxury goods that were traded in the Islamic Empire were silk, spices, fur, and incense. There were also a couple other things, but these were some of the big ones. Fabric factories were located in Spanish cities, Baghdad, Persia, and Tunis in Egypt. The Indian Ocean trade route was more important because it was easier to ship goods over water than it was to do so over land. And caravans were large groups of people and camels that carried goods across land. Very, 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 very good. Now, like the American economy that we have, money was a necessary part of the economy of the Islamic Empire. People used gold coins called dinars and silver coins called dirhams. Large transactions were made using letters of credit called saftaja. These were similar to bank checks that we use today. Traders used them because they were easier to carry than large numbers of coins, and merchants could take the letters to bankers in exchange for coins. At that time in history, much of the world's coins had the images of rulers. But the Islamic coins, on the other hand, would feature verses from the Quran because, as we've already talked about, the Islamic culture doesn't show people in their art. They do a lot more text. All right, so we have some more fact or opinion questions. We're going to write F if the statement is a fact or O if it is an opinion. We are not correcting anything to make it a fact, though, like we did with the true or false. So, the greatest merchants in history worked in the Islamic Empire. Fact or opinion? That's an opinion, right? We know a lot of them worked in the Islamic Empire, but we don't know that they were the greatest merchants. Mehmed made a living as a merchant. Fact or opinion? Well, that's a fact. Right? His dad was a merchant. He was a merchant. He was a merchant all the way up until he was getting his revelations from God or Allah. Goods such as silk, spices, fur, incense, salt, and grains were traded in the Middle East. That's a fact. The Karamis earned their wealth by working harder than everybody else. True? Or fact or opinion? Well, that was an opinion. We don't know that they worked harder than everybody else. We just know they had a monopoly. That they basically had control of that area. We don't know that that means they worked harder. The most scenic trade route was along the coast of Africa. Well, that's an opinion for sure. We didn't even talk about a scenic trade route. Caravans were used to carry goods across land. Now that's a fact. We talked about that. The Silk Road began in the Chinese city of Xi'an. I hope that's right. And ended in Baghdad. Well, that's pretty accurate. Yep. Now, there would be other routes that would actually connect the city of Baghdad over to Europe, but the main route ended in Baghdad. The dinar was prettier than other coins during this period. Bro, that's an opinion. We don't know if it was prettier or anything. We saw a picture of the dinar. We didn't see a picture of any of the others. We don't know that it's prettier. And would you look at that? We're done with the notes. It's been a long few days doing these notes. It really has been. Told you we weren't going to finish them all in one day. It's a lot. But guess what? Now that we've done our notes, we've done our front loading, now we can do more reading activities, more picture analysis, more actual activities to get that info to stick in your brain. All right, guys. So go on ahead, turn these notes in, and be prepared that now we're going to actually start doing some reading activities, some analysis, things like that. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day.